Good morning, Facebook family and friends. This is Saturday mornings with Dr. Mama Rosie Thompson. Um, I'm so sorry, starting over. Good morning, Facebook family and friends. This is Saturday morning with Dr. Mama Rosie Thompson. Today is February 24th, 2024. As I prepared for today, um, I thought about how sometimes family members, brothers and sisters with the same parent, grow up and do something different, grow up and be somebody different. I thought about the uniqueness of how we are. And then I began to think about how we oftentimes want everybody to be the same, but we actually don't want everybody to be the same. I know what I'm trying to say is we have two siblings, same parents. One of them go off to be successful, whatever reason. One of them start to drink, and their life is a life filled with alcoholism. And we and when we are on the outside we're looking at that and we don't understand. Sometimes it could be it is rather their own experiences, the thing that they've experienced in life, the traumas that they have experienced in life, whether they're the same trauma, they were in the same household, they saw the same thing, but they come out with two different ways of thinking. They come out with two different aspects of everything, and they're able to live their lives in two different ways. It's the trauma in our own experiences that get us and have us behaving the way that we do. So, in saying that, it helps us to know that none of us are the same. I went through life a long time wondering why people did certain things and why would they do that and why would they say that. It bothered me a lot. I want to stop here and say to anyone who's coming on to watch this video, I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining. If I don't see you, it's because I'll have the PowerPoint up. But thank you so much. I appreciate every comment. I thank you for coming on live. I thank you for those that's watching on YouTube. Thank you so much. But anyway, they grew up in the same household and they do something totally different. I grew up in a long time in life. I wondered why people did things and why would people say things. And I talk about that in the book and I talked about it some here. I didn't understand it. I felt that if I could respect the person that I admired most in life, my mom, my dad, whoever, if I could respect that person and certain things that I wouldn't do or say to them, to those people, then I shouldn't say it to the homeless person. And as I thought about it even more, that's because that was my experience. When I was younger, as I've told you before, we fed the homeless. We had to feed the homeless. And my mom was our pastor, and she would not allow us. First of all, we brought dishes sometime to feed the homeless. She would buy food, but we could bring a dish, and our dishes were inspected before we even got to serve anybody. She would look at what we brought, and if it didn't meet her, expectations, or she didn't approve, we couldn't serve it. And another thing she would do after we would be behind the tables and we would be serving the food, and we'd have the people coming through to get their plate. And she would wait some time until a plate got almost done to hand to somebody, and she would step in front of them to hand it to them. And her reason for doing this, and you may have seen this, hopefully you haven't at your church, hopefully you haven't seen where they have a different plate for the pastor, or they would give a different plate to the first lady, but then a homeless person would get a different plate. So my mom wanted to ensure that we didn't do that. So that would growing up in that environment. Another thing she did. Let me tell you this. Another thing that she did. We used to live on the north side on Sheridan, by by Sunnyside, and the police would do those prostitute, I guess they call it prostitute sting, where they would have the lady walking down the street, and then when the guy come up and try to pick them up, the police would arrest them. And my mom would call us on the to the balcony, and she said, "You see that prostitute right there? That's you, baby. That's you if God don't keep you. That's you without God in your life." So I grew up believing that whatever I see anybody else doing, I'm no better. The only reason that I'm not doing that is because God has kept me and because of my life experiences, what I've been taught, the way I've been raised, and how I perceived it. That's important too. I want to say that because when I talk about the two kids growing up in the same house, how they perceive it. I saw the trauma in our house, and you see, I've talked about a lot how it affected me. But then I have brothers and sisters who were just fine. They seem to be just fine, or they dealt with the trauma in different ways. But for me, it was like devastating to me. And that maybe I don't know what it is or how it is, but I wanted to say all of that because sometimes when we're talking about trauma, and today we're going to talk about boundaries. When we talk about trauma and boundaries, what you need is not what I need. What I need is not what you need. So when we talk about trauma, we don't ever know what that other person has been through. And even if we were in the same house and know some of what they've been through, we don't know how it affected them. So today, February 24th, as I said before, we're going to go into trauma again. But today, our focus will be a little bit different. As we know, trauma is any emotional response to any event that leaves us feeling overwhelmed or isolated. So when the trauma happened in our lives as kids and growing up, it affected me one way. Some of my siblings a different way. And it's because we're different. We're different. So I'm saying that because when we get to be an adult, as when we get to where we are now, and we look at people and we don't understand why they do and say certain things, the more we understand trauma in our own lives, it helps us to understand trauma in their lives. Other rather the effect of trauma in their lives, how the triggers can come, how they can be so people you find people that are so rude and disrespectful and mean. And it could be their trauma response. They could be putting up this shield because they can't allow you to get close because someone hurt them when they got close before. We want to bring ourselves all the way back to our ventral vagal. We'll remember that, which is our central place when trauma triggers occur. We want to bring ourselves back there where we're able to manage and deal with the trauma. We're able to handle it in a way that's the best way. Um, when we talk about boundaries, we're taught even as a child to bend and to mold ourselves to make other people feel comfortable. That's the way we're taught. Sometimes they imply this message in school, everybody got to dress alike, this is the way you got to be. But sometimes it's direct. Like you have these direct messages that say things like, I don't care if you don't want to hug your granddaddy. Go ahead and hug him anyway. I don't care if you don't want to go sit on your daddy's lap. Go sit on it anyway. That's your daddy. That's rude not to do that. The truth is that it's always there. It's always something that in our childhood that bend us and mold us to make other people comfortable. So that's an ordinary thing, and that's a natural feeling that's what we do. We can be in a fight with somebody, they make us go and apologize when the other kids started to fight. So that's in us. Boundaries. When we talk about boundaries. First of all, remember that boundaries are invisible lines. They're invisible. We draw them for ourselves, but they're invisible. They define what behaviors are acceptable by us. They can be physical. We don't want anybody to touch us. They can be emotional. We don't like when people lie to us. They can also be based on time and space. When I finish this, and this, please respect my time and understand that I'm not able to hang out with you. I'm not able to talk to you until I finish this, and this. I have to do this, and this. These are our boundaries. So remember that boundaries are invisible and we draw them for ourselves. The reason I said that so many times because if they're invisible, why do we get so upset when other people don't see them? Okay. And we draw them for ourselves. We sometimes set boundaries for ourselves in our mind, and we want other people to respect those boundaries when they don't even know what they are. The reason we set them, setting clear boundaries, it's a form of self care. It's taking care of ourselves. It helps us to create a clear guideline or a rule or limit on how we want to be treated. It let other people know what is and what's not okay with us, what's not acceptable. It honors our needs and wants so that we can feel respected and safe. Excuse me. Other people are not responsible for making us feel respected and safe. We are responsible by setting boundaries in our lives. When we establishing clear boundaries, it's crucial to maintaining a healthy relationship. We cannot just assume that the other person see my invisible lines. I've drawn these invisible lines for myself, and I expect somebody else to see them. So if they don't see them or they don't know what they are, then maybe our boundaries are not clear. They allow us to communicate our needs, what we need effectively, create limitations around our personal space, and to maintain a sense of anonymity or self-governing in the world. We want to feel that we're in control of ourselves, and that's what when we have boundaries, they help us to maintain that sense of anonymity. We have to have it where we know that I'm in control of me. And boundaries can help to keep us safe. They help to keep us safe from physical harm, emotional harm, and I say especially mental harm. Sometimes people don't have boundaries. They don't set them. And the reason sometimes that people don't have boundaries, first one of them can be the fear of losing love, the fear of being rejected, the fear of being abandoned or emotionally cut off. When we find people who are really needy or codependent, they have a desperate need to be loved, they find to see love and affection from other people. So, in order to have this love and affection, they sacrifice their own identity. We talked about that when we talked about that trigger, the trauma response called fawn, where we give in so much. We give in so much because we want people to like us. We give in so much until we just whoever we are, we let it go. I heard a song. I heard a song. Alicia Keys sing this song. I think it's called Gramercy Park. And she said, "I did everything I thought you wanted me to do, and I tried to be everything I thought you wanted me to be. And then the person they fell in love with wasn't even her. So sometimes we do this. We do this because we want that affection. We want that love. We want somebody to appreciate us. And so we give in so much until we lose who we really are and what we really want. Okay. Another reason sometimes people don't set boundaries is for fear of being somebody being angry with them. An angry action can send us some of us off over the edge. We can't take when people get angry with us. I can't take well, forgive me. There was a time I hope I've gotten past that where I couldn't take when people were angry with me. If I felt that I did anything to make somebody angry with me, I couldn't even sleep. I would be going to bed, laying in bed thinking about that stuff, playing it over and over in my mind, and the other person could be at home sleeping. So the potential of someone being mad at us will sometimes keep us from standing firm on what we believe in. We'll back down. We'll try to say it, but then when we find that that person don't like what we are saying, we back down from it. Sometimes a reason for not setting boundaries is a fear of hurting other people. If I say no, it may hurt their feeling. So I want to say this: if we say no, it could hurt someone's feeling. The thing that we need to realize here is that hurt is not the same as harm. We don't want to harm anybody, but we want to. It's okay if we hurt somebody's feeling or hurt somebody's feeling because we're taking care of ourselves. Think about it like this: I go to the dentist. Don't like going to the dentist. I go to the dentist. Sometimes, even though they give me that shot, sometimes I can feel the pain. That pain is hurtful, but it's not harmful. It's actually good for me. So sometimes we need to, when we're having boundaries and talking to other people, we really need to realize that they're adults too. So they can take what we're saying. It's okay. They may not like it. So the other day, I went to lunch with a friend of mine, and his friend, there were some things that they say, some words that they use that I really don't like. Even when they were talking to me, they would call me the words, and I really didn't like them. And I said that I waited and I said something. The first time I didn't say nothing, probably didn't say it the second time, but I knew that I had to say something. I was waiting for the right time, so I said, "Don't call me that anymore." And I told and I went on. Well, when I first said, "Don't call me that anymore," he's like, "I didn't mean any harm. I said I do that just something I say. I said, well, don't do it with me. I don't like it." And I told him how I don't like it, and I don't want to be called that. So when you go and set boundaries and communicate your boundaries, we'll talk about communicating them. But when you do that, it's not that they don't like it. It's just coming up to it's not that comfortable place that they were at with you doing things, especially when you're setting boundaries with people that you have never had boundaries with, but you have relationships with. It becomes harder. Sometimes people don't set boundaries because of the fear of being misunderstood. We give in to avoid being misunderstood. We just want somebody to understand. We just want somebody to know that we didn't mean any harm. We just want them to know. We just don't want them to do this. We don't want them to say that. We are not in control of anybody but ourselves. So when we set our boundaries, when we talk about boundaries, we cannot control how someone else will feel, how someone else will take them. We want to do it in the right way, and that's what we're going to talk about. How do we do it, especially after trauma? And that does not mean that what you do is not going to sit well with everybody. One of the most common reasons for not setting boundaries is the fear of conflict. We don't want to upset anybody. We don't want to anger anybody. So we sacrifice our own needs just to keep peace. And then sometimes for some of us, well, God said to be a peacemaker, but He didn't say to sacrifice our own needs. God gave it to us. This life belongs to us. We're supposed to have that abundant life. And when we find things, as we talk about these things, boundaries and trauma and other things, as we talk about them, we're looking for that abundant life that's ours. It belongs to us. So trauma, when we talk about boundaries and trauma by its own very nature is a violation of personal safety and comfort. That's what. So when trauma by itself is a violation of that, okay, that lets us know that we need a boundary there. It can stem from moments where boundaries were ignored. We can have uh this this violation can happen when we feel that our boundaries have been ignored, when they've been distorted, or they've been crossed in some type of harmful way. So trauma by nature is a violation of our personal safety and comfort. And it stems from moments where boundaries were ignored, where they were distorted or crossed in some harmful way. Trauma can skew perception of control, personal rights, and safety. When we have trauma in our lives, you know how we talked about trauma, and when we have trauma in our life where we don't feel like we deserve it, we just doing things, and we seem to be just going through some motion until we get to that place where I told you my last day of work, where I went and I felt that I was at this cliff, and I felt that everything in front of me was this deep drop off, and I knew that I couldn't go anywhere forward. But behind me felt like everything that I had experienced in my life, the hurt, the disrespect, the traumas in my life were at my back, and I didn't know how to go that way. So I had no control anymore. I didn't feel safe anymore. And it may lead us to believe that our boundaries were not respected in the first place, so they won't be respected in the future. I talked about that. I told you about when I retired the first time, when I would talk about how this manager was doing and saying things to me, and I was reporting him, and nothing was being done. Until you get to a point where you say, well, it don't make any sense to say anything. And I've heard that so many times, but it's not going to matter if I say anything. Yes, it does. It matters if it's your safety. It matters if it's your personal safety and your comfort zone. It matters. And don't let anybody tell you it does not matter. When we have this type of violation, it can leave us feeling powerless. It can lead to a future where asserting our own limits feel unnerving, unsettling. And in some people, which is so very sad, it can be impossible. So while we're talking about these trauma, and we're talking about boundaries, some people may look at their lives and realize that I need to set some boundaries. Some people may not be able to. Like we talked about the lady, empathy, the lady in the hole, there's a ladder right there, but she can't come out. We have to understand that as well. Maybe she can't come out. Like I can't go in, she may not, she can't come out. And sometimes, like I have this a real fear of flying. And every time I say I don't want to fly, I don't like flying, I have a fear of flying. People start telling me about statistics about how many accidents people have in cars, and how much safer it is in an airplane, and how fast we can get there. I know all of that. I really don't even like hearing all of that, but I still have a fear of flying. Will I fly if I feel like I need to? I have flown multiple times, but I do not like flying. And when I can go someplace, if I'm getting ready for another vacation, for my vacation, and if I can go on vacation and I can get on Amtrak and go, I'm in no hurry. My vacation starts when I leave home, so I'm in no hurry. If you want to meet me there, take a flight and meet me there, that's fine. But don't let it has to be fine. I don't mind if I get on Amtrak and take me 2 days, and you get on a plane and take you an hour and a half. I have no problem with that. Why does it? Then I wonder why does it bother you that you can get on an airplane an hour and a half, and I got 2 days traveling. What is it? What that got to do with you? We're gonna meet up at the same place. You just tell me where we're going. But we have to really be mindful of other people's boundaries, other people's trauma, things that happen in other people's life. We don't have to know what happened to them, but it could be trauma, and it makes us more empathetic when we realize it could be trauma. So another thing, many of us uh, try have tried to practice self care. We want to do these things. We want to take care of ourselves. We want to protect ourselves, but we try to do it without setting boundaries. The root, the very root of self care is setting boundaries. We can try to be okay outside of boundaries, but it will not work. The very root of self care is setting boundaries. It's saying no to something in order to say yes to our own emotional, to our own physical, and to our own mental well being. There is no self care without boundaries. Because you keep finding yourself, you may be able to do it for a little while, but you'll find yourself keep running into these same places that need boundaries. When we deal with trauma triggers, boundaries can help us take back control of situations. They protect our energy. It's so much energy to try to be okay in a place where we're not, to try to feel safe in a place where we're not feeling safe. I used to come home from work, and I would be exhausted, but not from the work. I loved the work, but from the other stuff that was just it's like a mental tiredness, and it's worse than being physically tired. So when dealing with trauma triggers, boundaries can help us take back control or protect our energy and honor our own self-worth. So this is big because when we honor our self-worth, we give that same respect, that same dignity and understanding to ourselves that we want other people to give us. So I want respect, I give me respect. I want dignity, I have dignity. I want understanding, then I have to understand others. We also want to be the cue. We want to be that cue, rather, for other people about how we want to be, how we want to be the cue for people to see how we will be tolerated or treated. So my cue cannot be if I say to the friend that I don't like that word. I'm not gonna laugh when they say that word because it's not funny to me. I'm not gonna act like it's okay that you said that word because that word is not cool. This is the cue that I'm gonna give you that I'm not gonna be a part of that. A friend of mine is doing something that I really don't think she should be doing, and she want she feels that she's doing a good thing. I don't, personal opinion. And she was so excited about doing it that she would come and tell me what she's doing. And Mama Rose and I did this, and Mama Rose, I'm gonna do this. And one day I called her because it was really bothering me, and I could talk to her, and I told her that I said I don't think what you're doing is right. You know what you're doing, how what the outcome could be. You don't know what it's going to be, but you know what it could be, and it could be devastating for some of the parties involved. So I've talked to the other party and I'm talking to you. And if you guys are going to continue to do that, don't come and share with me. I don't like it. We have to have these conversations. As I said, with our boundaries, they are invisible lines that we draw for ourselves. Other people don't see our invisible lines. There's a statement that sometimes we often say, well, they know what they're doing. When people do things that we don't like, well, they know what they're doing. They may know how to do what they're doing, but oftentimes people don't know the extent of the consequences for what they do. That same, well, not that same man. We're not going to say about him, but if somebody know the extent of the consequences for stealing, they may know what can happen, but they don't know what that judge is going to say when he get there. Then they get to court, and they find out. Okay, let's leave court alone. Let's drive without a license. I think I like that one better. So they know that they can drive. They feel comfortable driving. They don't have a driver's license. They feel like they're okay about it. They know it's wrong to be driving without a license. It's against the law. It's not. But when they go out there, they feel that they can go to the store and come back. They don't know the extent of the consequences. They may go out and somebody hit them. Now somebody hit them, and then they're found without license, and it could be a bigger problem than they would have expected. So people may know what they're doing in the sense that they know how, but they don't always know the extent of the consequences. The guy I told you about who used to beat me up, he knew how to beat me up, but he didn't know that one day that he was going to come home from work and I would be gone. Because how can I say that? I can tell you that because when we went after I left him and went to my parents' house after I broke up with them, and I talked about this in one of the other videos about it. And when I left and he started to come around my family's house and he was still like coming around and stalking me. And I went to court. And when I got to court and to get a restraining order from him, he told the judge that I couldn't leave him. It was so horrible in the courtroom until the judge told you threatened to lock him up. He didn't lock him up. I was still after my court was over and I was waiting for my attorney to come and talk to me. He told me your boyfriend is still outside. Wait until I finish my last case and I'll drive you home. So he didn't know that the extent of the consequences of doing that. He didn't know that I was going to leave. He didn't know that I was going to get a restraining order. He didn't know that I would never see him again. So we don't know. Some people sometimes we make mistakes when it comes to boundaries. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make is setting boundaries in our mind, but not openly sharing them with the people in our lives. Well, I don't want this, and they make me mad when they do that. It bothers me when they say that, but we don't open our mouth and share them with them. We don't say, "I have a problem with that." I have a friend, which I really like. I used to like hanging out with, it, like being with, and we would always. Sometimes we didn't always, but we would go eat and we would do things together. We hang out together. And I found that this friend very seldom, second seldom to none, would make any offer to do anything. Just come in and come in and I pay for it and never say, "Hey, I got you on a White Castle burger today." And that was a problem for me. So I shared with that friend, and we have to let them know I have a problem with this. This bothers me when you do that. I'm not asking you to do tit for tat, but I do expect you, as my friend, to sometime invite me. I need to know that you want to be around me, like I'm trying to show you that I want to be around you. It's a mistake for people to go into any type of relationship based on what I can't go into a relationship with you with what I think you need. You shouldn't can't come into a relationship with me with what you think I need. So the same person that told me that called me this word that I told you I didn't like was proud to say they open doors for women. Leave the door open. I'd rather you leave that door closed and not call me that word than you open the door for me and use this language around me. So you can't go into a relationship with somebody based on what you think that you've done and what you think you know how to do. I remember when I was married and we went to marriage counseling one time and the man said to us, he said, you could be a good wife, but you don't necessarily have to be a good wife for him. You may in your mind you may feel that, okay, I'm a good wife because I keep the house clean and I cook and I do that, and all of that stuff is not what's important to him. That's why sometimes we see people with other people and we wonder, well, look, they don't take care. I heard somebody said to me about a celebrity's wife. She doesn't make herself up, but she's giving him what he needs. See, we think that we know what other people want. No, we don't. That stuff that we think sometimes people that's important to other people, it's not. So we need to find out and communicate in order to understand that if we don't, we're not going to be able to have productive and great relationships. I'm going to stop here just to say thanks to anyone who's come online. Thank you so much to anyone who's listening to this video. I really, really appreciate it. Okay. Sometimes people assume that you know their boundaries. I said that. But if you don't communicate them clearly, show them where the line is drawn. Tell them how where the line is. If you don't tell me where your boundary line is drawn, why would you get upset with me because I overstepped it? It's an invisible line that you drew. So if you drew this invisible line and I overstep it, and you're angry with me because I overstepped it, instead of looking at yourself and saying, I should have made that line, even though I made it invisible and it's for me, I should have told Rosa that's my boundary. That's my boundary. So we it's kind of hard sometimes. It's a skill for many people, but especially for people who have experienced trauma and or childhood trauma to start to recognize when limits have been crossed for others. I didn't even know that I had a boundary. I had never even thought about it in that term until after I became an adult and went to therapy. and she gave me a book titled Boundaries, and she told me to read it. So it's a skill for many people. That's another thing. We don't want to feel bad about things that we didn't do or things that we don't do. Today is a new day. We can start today. So this is a skill for many people. Identifying their boundary violation is a skill for a lot of people, but it's especially so for people who had trauma or childhood trauma. It's a skill for us to try to recognize when limits have been crossed by other people. When you've been, if when this has happened to you so much, you can get to a place that you don't even know that a limit has been crossed. And sometimes, many times, brother, when this crossing of our boundaries can cause distress, even trigger past traumatic experiences, flashbacks, and at times it can even cause disassociation. We talked a lot today. I think I'm going to go just a little bit more on how to set boundaries, just a little bit more, and then I'll let you go. Um, how to set them. First, we always start with this: recognize, consider, think about it. Know for a fact that you deserve to be treated with respect. If you don't feel that you are worthy and worthwhile in and of yourself, let me say it today. You are worthwhile. You are worthy. You are everything that anybody else, I don't care who they are, who we are, and the worthiness of who we are is not based on any material thing. It's not based on the finances. It's not based on anything other than the fact that you're here. You deserve to be. It's not being respected is not that and valued is not a privilege. It's a right. You have a right to be respected. You have a right to be valued. You have a right. You have a right because of who you are. You are definitely worthwhile. Definitely deserve it. You're just as important as anybody in the entire world. You're just as important if you don't have red bottom shoes. You're just as important if you don't see if your bank account is not where you want it to be. You're just as important if you don't like the way your eyes look or your nose or your hair or whatever, your weight. You are still just as important as anybody else. And you are worthwhile, just as worthwhile as anybody else. That was one thing that my mom passed on to me and that I heard. I am no better than anybody else, but there's nobody in the world better than me. You are no better than anybody else, but there's nobody in the world better than you. Being respected and valued is not a privilege. It's not for the rich. It's not for this one, but it's for everybody. It's a right, and it's your right. You deserve to be loved, but you also has to know how to love. When we want to be loved. We want to be, but we need to know how to do it ourselves. We want to be that cue on how we want to be treated. We want to be that cue on how we want to be loved. We deserve. There's a respect that says we deserve what we get. So treating someone in a way they like to be treated shows a willingness to acknowledge them on their own terms. So people want to treat you, but you want to be treated the way you like being treated. That's what I was saying about that relationship. I tried to do so many things for my ex-husband. One day, I thought I was doing something good, and he told me I thought I was his mother. So you have to take that time to find out what they want and how they like to be treated because it shows them and a willingness to acknowledge them. I acknowledge that you don't want that. I acknowledge the fact that you don't want me doing it this way. This is what your mom done. I acknowledge that and I want to be treat you on your terms, how you want to be treated. We don't get to decide the terms for somebody else. And we do it too often. Okay. Recognize your needs and limits. So when we do that, we need to recognize where we our limits. We talked about recognizing our window of tolerance and when it has decreased and how to increase our window of tolerance. But we want to recognize what we need. What do I need? And I always say, I need to be respected. I need you to respect my time. I need you to respect my space. I need to respect when I say no and leave it right there. I don't have to. I don't have to explain it. I don't have to justify it. If I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. Sometimes people, I know, sometimes people say, "What do you do?" Sometimes I spend an entire day doing nothing. I'd be so busy all day doing nothing because that's what I choose to do. That's what retirement is to me. To somebody else, it may be traveling. To somebody else, it may be gardening. To somebody else, it may be babysitting. My retirement is to me is to do what I want, when I want, any way I want. That's what my retirement. Because and it all stem back, as I said, to the trauma in our lives, the experiences that we had. I raised my kids. My mom didn't raise my. I raised my own kids. I had four of them. So I may not babysit for you. That's your child. I'll help you if I feel that I can. I feel that I want. But that's your child. So my limits are I don't want to have to wake up in the morning and try to make breakfast for the kid that don't eat anything but McDonald's. That I don't know how to do that. I'm getting up eating rice and fried chicken, and the baby sitting there looking at me because they don't eat that. I'm like, oh Lord, now I gotta go figure out what they eat. So I babysit when I want to. I do what I want, and that's what my needs, my limit. My limit is that I'm not gonna step over your boundaries. I'm gonna clearly let you know what mine are, and ask that you don't step over mine. And when you, if I find that you do it, maybe one time you may get away, but after that, I have to manage my boundaries. I have to protect myself. I have to care for myself. So recognize your needs and your limits. Identify your needs and limits is a crucial respect. It's a crucial respect when we're healing from trauma. It's crucial. Somebody else may see it as being mean, but it's a crucial aspect of healing with trauma, healing from trauma. And as you know, I didn't even start to recognize the trauma in my life until I became an adult. So I may be years late with things that I hope that you don't be. I'm 67 years old. I hope you don't be 67 years old when you realize that I came on these videos and I saw Mama Rosie talking, but it was me that I need to be looking at. I don't hope that you're not 67 when you stop looking through the window at other people's life and look in the mirror of your own to see how can I be better. How can I be better? This is all it that's all my desire is that I become better and then I can help someone else to do the same. Identify triggers that lead to a need for setting boundaries. Everything may not require one, but there are when we see these triggers in our lives, these trauma triggers in our lives, things that have happened to us, and we see these triggers, they come back up. It's important to recognize situations where we feel uncomfortable and where we feel unsafe and it might need to be set boundaries with people around us. So when we get these things, we want to recognize, identify these triggers that lead to a need. So I know that it really bothered me for someone to say this, use this word for me. So that's a need. That was a need for me to set a trigger there. I mean to set a boundary there. Maybe maybe a need for you to set a boundary with how much I don't I have had to ask friends not to call me uh like super early in the morning even if they're on their way to work. Sometimes people, because um they feel like you well, you're retired, so it's okay if I call you anytime. I had to set some boundaries around that. Don't call me late at night. I've got to the point now that I like my sister. I don't care if she called on her way to work in the morning time and wake me up. That's okay. But sometimes I don't want to be called at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. Maybe you feel like, well, you can go back to sleep because you don't work. But that's not for you to decide. Boundaries are invisible lines that we draw for ourselves. They belong to us. Acknowledge personal limitations in certain situations. Understand what we can handle emotionally, physically, and mentally can help prevent burnout and being overwhelmed. Acknowledge personal limitations. Say to yourself, no, that this is something that bothers me. This is physically, this is all I can do. Mentally, this is all I can take. Understand the importance of self-care. Prioritize it. Take care of yourself. Taking care of yourself should always be a top priority. Make sure you're scheduling time for activities that bring you joy and calmness. That's what I do. I schedule time now And see, when I schedule time now, it's not because it's not on a clock time, but it's on my time. So when I schedule time now to go for my walk, sometimes I go for my walks early in the morning, sometimes I go afternoon, sometimes I go in the evening. I'm comfortable out walking now, so I schedule these times, but they're not scheduled on a clock. So if I when I know what I do now, if anybody want to do things with me, then if I know ahead of time, definitely I'm going to make time for you. I'm going to because I love it and I love you, so I make time for you. But when it comes to doing my activities, I schedule them on my time. So you may want to do something when I'm doing something different, and that should be okay because when you're doing something and I want to do something, you're doing something different. That should be okay as well. So that's all we're going to talk about today. We want to remember. We want to remember that self care is important. We want to know remember that these boundaries we set, these are invisible lines that we have drawn for ourselves. Other people don't see our invisible lines. We have to share them. We'll talk about that and more as we go into some other things. We'll talk about some more. But we have to let people know where they are. We have to open our mouth. We can't assume that everybody is the same. Everybody not like me. And that's so awesome because I know I don't want everybody to be like me because I but but it's so awesome to meet the individual and the differences in who we are, the diversity in who we are. That's awesome. Thank you so much again for joining. I really appreciate it. I'll be back on Saturday and we will talk some more about boundaries. Our trauma affirmations for today. My life is divinely guided. I'm looking for some more affirmations. So if you got something that you'd like for me to read on Saturday morning, please send it to me. You can just put it in the comments. That'll be great. I am not defined by the trauma that I've experienced. Definitely not. No, I'm not defined by that. We can change. Yeah, we can change. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I have one family member who the feet are kind of really really bad. And when my one of my the kids saw their feet and asked them what happened to their feet, and they went back to say we were all adults at this time, and the family member said that when we were kids we didn't have shoes. That's true. We a lot of time we didn't have things, but as we become an adult, we can do something about it. We can do something about the trauma triggers that we're managing. We can manage those triggers. We can do something about it. Anything that we don't like in our life, we can do something about it. Sometimes the hard part is making that change that's not comfortable, but we can do it. We don't need permission to exist. We have a right to acknowledge our feelings without justifying them. This is how I feel. We don't have to justify them at all. We accept ourselves completely. Today we choose ourselves. We are only responsible for the me for ourselves in any relationship. And we are a safe place for ourselves. That one I think we should keep because we want to always be a safe place for ourselves. We are a safe place for ourselves. I want to thank you again to all of you who joined today. Really, really appreciate it. I hope you all have a great, great day. And I look forward to seeing you Saturday morning and have a great one. Thank you. Goodbye.